When a man says, "I've got this," it might seem like a simple offhand phrase, but underneath those three short words lies something far more powerful and telling, especially when it's spoken to the woman he loves madly. It's a phrase rooted not in dominance or bravado, but in love-fueled protection. When a man is truly in love, he doesn't just want to stand next to his partner. He wants to be a source of strength, a shield, and a stabilizer in her world. This phrase shows up in moments when things feel out of control. Maybe you're overwhelmed, anxious, or facing a situation where you feel uncertain. That's when he steps in, not to take control away from you, but to let you know that you don't have to carry everything alone. It's an emotional anchor disguised as a casual sentence. It says, "You're safe with me. You can lean on me." And that's something most people miss, because they're looking for love in grand gestures, not quiet reassurances. When a man says, "I've got this," he is communicating that he sees your stress and wants to ease it, not because he thinks you're incapable, but because your peace matters deeply to him. He's not trying to fix everything for you to feel superior. In fact, in many cases, he knows you could handle it on your own. But love isn't about watching your partner struggle just to prove their strength. It's about offering relief when you know it would help. That offer is a kind of love language, one that often goes unnoticed because it's so practical. What sets this phrase apart in the context of real love is that it doesn't need to be flashy. A man who loves deeply doesn't need the spotlight when he's protecting or providing. He may say, "I've got this," when he picks up a task without being asked, when he sees that you've had a long day and decides to handle dinner. When you're stressed about a situation and he steps up to manage it without making it a big deal. Each time he says it, he's reinforcing the message, "You're not alone." This phrase also speaks volumes about emotional availability. Men who struggle with vulnerability often find it difficult to express their feelings openly, but when love is present, it finds a way through action. "I've got this" is one of those phrases that bridges the gap between emotion and action. It's not romantic in the traditional sense, but it's deeply intimate. It shows his instinct to protect, to provide comfort, to be a steady presence when things feel chaotic. At its core, this phrase is about responsibility, not just in the sense of doing something, but in choosing to be responsible for someone's emotional well-being. That's a huge deal. In a world where emotional neglect is common, where people often check out when things get hard, the act of leaning in and taking ownership says everything about how deeply he cares. He's not running, he's not shutting down, he's showing up. What makes this phrase even more powerful is that it comes from a place of calm certainty. It doesn't demand praise, it doesn't make a show of sacrifice, it simply reassures. A man who says, "I've got this," in a moment of stress is offering you more than help. He's offering you peace. Peace that comes from knowing that someone has your back, that you're not expected to carry the emotional weight of the world on your own shoulders. It's also important to notice when he says this in response to your emotional vulnerability. Maybe you're breaking down. Maybe you've hit a wall and can't hold it together. In that moment, his first instinct isn't to run away from the discomfort of emotions. His instinct is to lean in and say, "I've got this." That's when it becomes more than comfort. It becomes devotion, because in choosing to be steady in the face of your emotions, he's choosing you. All of why. Oh, even the parts you usually try to hide. This phrase often appears in relationships that are grounded in emotional safety. It can only emerge authentically when there's trust. When a man feels safe enough in the relationship to express his love through protection, and when a woman feels safe enough to receive that support without it feeling like an attack on her independence. In fact, when love is healthy, phrases like, "I've got this," don't take power away from either person. They create a shared power, a dynamic of mutual care. Another key layer to this phrase is how it represents emotional leadership. Emotional leadership isn't about controlling someone else's emotions. It's about knowing how to hold space when they're overwhelmed and stepping in to lead with empathy and stability. Men who say, "I've got this," aren't trying to be heroes. They're trying to be anchors. And that's what love asks for, especially in times of hardship. Not someone who saves you, but someone who stays with you. Many people overlook this phrase because they think love should sound more poetic or intense, but love often shows up in the everyday language of reassurance. When you're with a man who truly loves you, his most powerful declarations won't always sound like a romantic movie. They'll sound like this: "Don't worry, I've got this." And in that moment, what he's really saying is, "I see you, I care, and I'm not going anywhere." This is why the phrase deserves so much more recognition than it gets. In the noise of modern dating, where flashy gestures and passionate declarations dominate social media, it's easy to miss the quiet loyalty behind words like these. But if you pay attention, you'll see that this phrase is a window into a man's heart. It's the verbal expression of a deep emotional bond, of a decision to love with action, not just with words. In fact, when a man consistently says this, when it becomes a natural part of how he interacts with you, it tells you something important about how he sees the relationship. It's not transactional. It's not conditional. It's a space where both people can bring their strengths and weaknesses, and where he chooses to step up when it's needed most. That's not just romantic. That's rare. And that's what makes it so meaningful. When a man asks, "What do you think?" it might appear like a small, polite question, something people say out of courtesy or habit. But when it comes from a man who is deeply in love, especially one who doesn't normally expose vulnerability or open his emotional world easily, this question is a subtle but profound display of love, trust, and admiration. It's not just about seeking your opinion. It's about making you a partner in his internal decision-making process, inviting you into the space where he shapes his ideas, values, and future. In romantic dynamics, especially in early stages, many men are conditioned to present themselves as strong, decisive, and in control. For these men, asking someone else, even their partner, "What do you think?" may feel like ceding power or admitting uncertainty. That's why when a man who loves you says this, it carries weight. He's not just asking for input. He's showing that he values your intelligence, respects your insight, and trusts your judgment. And that kind of emotional inclusion is far more intimate than any romantic gesture. This phrase becomes even more powerful when you realize that it shifts the relationship from something one-sided to something collaborative. He is no longer the one driving the decisions alone. He is asking you to sit in the passenger seat, not just for the ride, but to help navigate. That is real intimacy, the kind where your mind is just as attractive to him as your body, and your thoughts are not just tolerated but desired. There's a special kind of emotional maturity behind this question. It comes from a place of knowing that love isn't about one person leading and the other following. It's about shared vision. When a man asks, "What do you think?" especially in moments of importance, he is doing something extremely vulnerable. He is exposing his uncertainty, which many men have been taught to hide. He's showing that he doesn't want to make decisions in isolation, that he sees you as someone with wisdom, perspective, and clarity, someone whose opinions are not just welcome, but crucial. In relationships where this phrase is absent, you often find emotional distance. One partner may feel like their voice doesn't matter, like their thoughts are overlooked. But when a man constantly includes you in this way, it shows that he not only respects your individuality, but sees your value as an emotional and intellectual equal. That's not just love, that's deep partnership. It's easy to confuse this phrase with casual conversation. People ask for opinions all the time. But there's a difference between asking out of obligation and asking with sincerity. When a man loves you madly, "What do you think?" comes with presence. He listens to your words, watches your reactions, and genuinely considers your view. You're not a sounding board, you're a co-pilot. There's also a deeper implication behind this phrase. He wants to know how something will affect you. Whether it's a life decision, a family issue, or a future plan, his thought process now includes your emotions, your dreams, and your needs. He doesn't want to move forward without knowing how you feel, because your feelings are now tied to his sense of direction. He may not always take your advice, but the fact that he wants it is a sign that you live in his heart and in his logic. Sometimes this phrase shows up during conflict or tension, and that's where its meaning becomes even more powerful. If a man asks, "What do you think?" in the middle of a disagreement, it means he's putting ego aside. He's not trying to win. He's trying to understand. He's not prioritizing being right. He's prioritizing connection. That moment becomes an opportunity for or emotional repair, where he shows you that your perspective still matters even when emotions run high. In a society that often defines masculinity as self-reliance and stoicism, the simple act of seeking your opinion becomes an act of emotional bravery. He's showing that he doesn't have to do it all alone, and that your voice helps complete his understanding of the world. That's love stripped of pride, real, raw, and rooted in respect. This question also has the power to deepen attraction, because nothing draws two people closer than mutual curiosity. When a man seeks to understand how you think, what drives you, how you see the world, he's loving you in your entirety, not just for how you make him feel, but for the way you interpret life, the values you hold, and the depth of your thoughts. He's not just listening, he's learning from you. And every time he does, he falls a little more in love. Even in the smallest areas, what movie to watch, what vacation to take, or how to spend a weekend. This phrase reinforces a powerful emotional truth. You matter to him. Your voice isn't just an add-on, it's a foundation. Your opinions are part of his inner compass. Whether he shows it through big decisions or everyday moments, he's saying, "We're a team." This phrase also invites reciprocity. When you feel heard, you're more likely to open up, share honestly, and offer the same emotional space in return. It becomes a cycle of deeper connection where both people grow because they're building something together. And that's the real reward of love. Not just passion, but partnership. Over time, when this question becomes a pattern, it builds trust. You begin to know that when something matters to him, he'll bring it to you. You won't have to guess where you stand or whether your voice is welcome. You'll already know that it is. That foundation of trust creates a rare kind of closeness, the kind where you feel not just loved, but seen and valued at the core of who you are. Ultimately, what do you think is more than a phrase? It's a doorway into his internal world, a window into his respect for you, a signal that you've not only captured his heart, you've earned his trust. And in a world where many relationships are built on surface-level connection, this kind of depth is what separates ordinary love from extraordinary partnership. When a man says, "I was thinking about you," most people hear it as a light, pleasant comment, something sweet to say in passing or during a conversation. But when a man is truly, madly in love, those 5 words are loaded with emotion, attachment, and depth that many never even notice. It's not just a statement. It's a signal. It's proof that you live in his mental and emotional world, not just in the physical one. And when love is real, that's one of the most revealing things he can say. We tend to think of love in terms of action, grand gestures, big surprises, and emotional confessions. But love lives just as much in thought. The moments when someone is away from you, living their separate life, doing their thing, and yet somehow your presence still lingers in their mind, those are the moments that define emotional connection. When a man says he was thinking about you, what he's really saying is, "You're not just someone I talk to. You're someone who lives inside my experience, even when we're apart." For men, especially those who are emotionally guarded, saying, "I was thinking about you," can be a big deal. It requires vulnerability. Because in that statement, they're admitting to something soft, something that breaks the illusion of self-sufficiency. It's an emotional admission that you've occupied their thoughts, disrupted their routine, or softened their day. It means you're not an afterthought. You're a presence that follows them into their quiet moments. And the context in which this phrase shows up matters. If it's said in the middle of a busy workday or after a long silence, it becomes even more meaningful. It means that in the midst of responsibilities, noise, and distractions, his mind still wandered to you. That's love operating underneath the surface. Not loud, not dramatic, but constant. It's not about missing you in a needy way, but about carrying you with him emotionally, because your presence brings comfort, joy, or simply a sense of home. One of the most overlooked aspects of this phrase is that it connects to emotional consistency. When a man genuinely thinks about you and chooses to tell you, it shows he's emotionally with you, even when he's physically elsewhere. He's building a bond that isn't dependent on proximity or convenience. This is crucial in any relationship that aims to last because it proves that your connection transcends time and space. He doesn't just value you when you're in front of him, he values you when you're not around, and he's letting you know that you matter even in silence. Many women overlook the impact of this phrase because it's so casual, but that's exactly why it's special. Anyone can say I love you in a romantic moment, but I was thinking about you comes unprompted. It's not said because the mood demands it. It's said because the feeling is real. And when it's said in a quiet moment out of nowhere, it reflects a man's internal world, not just his behavior. This phrase can take different forms. Sometimes it's a simple message. Other times it's accompanied by a picture, a memory, or something that reminded him of you. Maybe he heard a song, saw a place, or remembered a private joke. That's when you realize you're not just occupying his thoughts, you're becoming woven into the fabric of his daily experiences. That's love at its most natural and unconscious level, when it stops being something he tries to feel and becomes something he just fee. LS without effort. What's even more beautiful is that this phrase builds emotional safety. Knowing that someone is thinking about you creates a bridge between you, even when you're apart. It makes you feel less alone, more important, more seen. It creates a thread of emotional continuity that says we're still connected, even when we're not together. That kind of bond can weather distance, time, and life's unpredictability. It also reveals the shift in how he prioritizes you. When a man transitions from just liking someone to deeply loving them, his brain naturally starts making room for that person. She becomes part of his reference point, part of how he sees the world. His day isn't complete without her being part of it in some way, and even if it's just a passing thought. And when he chooses to share that thought with you, he's not just being sweet. He's offering proof that you've become emotionally essential. It's worth noticing how this phrase affects your own feelings. When someone says they were thinking about you, especially when it's said sincerely and without expectation, it makes you feel cherished, desired in a quiet, grounded way, not for what you do, but for who you are. It's validation, but not the shallow kind. It's the kind that tells you your presence is felt, even in your absence. That kind of validation builds emotional security, which is the foundation of every thriving relationship. Sometimes men who aren't naturally expressive will say this phrase as a way to test the emotional waters. They may not know how to say, I miss you, or I care about you deeply. So instead, they reach for a lighter phrase that still carries emotional depth. I was thinking about you becomes their way of saying, you matter to me, without feeling like they're exposing too much. But the sentiment behind it is still real. That's why you should listen closely when it's said, not just to the words, but to the emotion underneath. There's also a consistency to this phrase when a man is falling in love. You'll notice that he starts bringing you into conversations more often. He relates things back to you. He sends messages just because you popped into his head. He wants to connect not only when it's convenient, but when his heart prompts him to. That's not just romance, it's emotional loyalty. In a relationship that's deepening, this phrase becomes part of a larger emotional language. It's a thread that ties your lives together, and over time, you'll start to feel that you're always emotionally close, even during the busy or quiet moments. That's when love goes from something temporary to something enduring. When a man you love says, I was thinking about you, he's not just making conversation. He's telling you that your presence in his life is meaningful enough to cross his mind without prompting. He's revealing a part of his heart that many people never get to see. And even though it may sound simple, it's actually one of the most intimate, revealing things he can ever say. Love isn't always spoken through grand declarations or dramatic gestures. Often, it reveals itself in the subtle, almost invisible phrases that go unnoticed by most. I've got this shows his instinct to protect and provide emotional safety. What do you think reflects his deep respect for your mind and his desire for true partnership? I was thinking about you unveils the emotional thread that connects you to him even when you're apart. And I don't want to lose you exposes his most vulnerable truth, that you've become irreplaceable. These are not just words. They are emotional cues that tell you how madly he loves you. The key is to listen not just with your ears, but with your heart, because real love often whispers before it shouts.